During the reproductive years of a woman, the ovaries and uterus participate in a hormonally controlled cycle of events that repeats approximately every 28 days. In the ovaries, eggs mature and are released. In the uterus, the uterine lining breaks down and reforms. The 28-day cycle begins on the first day of menstruation. At sexual maturity, each of a woman's ovaries contains about 200,000 immature eggs. Several immature eggs from this group of cells begin to mature at the beginning of each menstrual cycle. A layer of ovarian cells called follicle cells surrounds an immature egg. Together, the egg and follicle cells constitute a follicle. By day 7, all of the developing follicles begin to degenerate except for one. The egg in the remaining follicle continues to develop, and around day 14, the egg erupts from the ovary in a process called ovulation. The oviduct contains microscopic cilia that beat and draw in the egg. The egg enters an oviduct where it remains viable for fertilization for up to 3 days. Sperm deposited in the female's reproductive tract remains viable for up to 2 days. Therefore, the window of opportunity for fertilization in any month is about 5 days. Fertilization results in a single-celled zygote. Even if fertilization occurs, pregnancy is not assured. About 15% of zygotes do not divide, usually because of a genetic problem. Another 15% divide, but never find their way to the uterus. 25% divide and reach the uterus, but fail to implant in the uterine wall. Thus, 55% of fertilizations do not lead to a pregnancy in which the embryo implants in the uterine wall. The follicle cells that are left behind in the ovary develop into a small mass called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes the hormones estrogen and progesterone, which maintain the uterine lining. At the end of the cycle, in the absence of fertilization and implantation, the corpus luteum disintegrates. Each month, the lining of the uterus builds up in preparation for pregnancy, and then sloughs off if no pregnancy occurs. The cycle begins with the sloughing of the uterine lining, called menstruation. This event is triggered by the disintegration of the corpus luteum, which no longer produces the large amounts of estrogen and progesterone necessary to keep the uterine lining intact. After menstruation, the uterine lining starts to grow again and to prepare for implantation of an embryo. During this phase of the uterine cycle, up until ovulation, the uterine lining proliferates and the glands that make up the uterine lining elongate. Capillary beds grow into the glands to supply this tissue with nutrients. If an egg is fertilized and implantation occurs successfully, the pregnant woman's monthly cycle stops and the uterine lining remains intact to nourish the emerging life. After a year of trying for a pregnancy, the success rate for a couple is about 80%. After a woman becomes pregnant, the chance that the pregnancy will result in a miscarriage is about 25%. Most miscarriages occur within the first trimester and are probably a result of genetic problems. The other 75% of pregnancies result in successful births.